The Chinese Moon Festival is coming, so it's time to make some mooncakes. Today, let's probe how to make two kinds of syrups. Clarified syrup for traditional North China-style mooncakes, and inverted golden syrup for Cantonese-style mooncakes. Both recipes can be completed in about 30 minutes. Let's start with clarified syrup. You'll need 500 grams castor sugar, 0.5 grams citric acid, 200 ml filtered water, and 80% clear malt syrup. Not this kind of fermented golden maltose. You need 80 grams, but measure out a little extra to account for loss during transfer. First off, take about 1 tablespoon out of the water and add it to the citric acid to dissolve it. Set aside. Then over the stove, add the remaining water to the sugar. Use a spatula to stir, dissolving as many sugar crystals as possible. Then turn the heat on to medium-high. Keep stirring till all the sugar crystals are dissolved. Be gentle not to splash sugar crystals onto the sides of the pan. Once the sugar is all dissolved, stop stirring. Bring the mixture to boil, and then add clear malt syrup. Give it a stir, then turn the heat to low. Numerous recipes suggest maintaining the temperature between 104 to 107 degrees Celsius for the syrup, so I decided to verify this. Surprisingly, the temperature quickly reached 107 degrees after adding the syrup, prompting me to add the citric acid now. The main purpose of adding the citric acid here is to prevent syrup from turning brown. Another reason that's worth mentioning that can cause crystallization is the sugar clinging to the sides of the pan. To prevent this, dip a clean brush into filtered water and brush the crystals back into syrup. Now back to the temperature. It may fluctuate a bit, but overall, it hovers around 107 degrees for 10 to 12 minutes. Then on the 13th minute when tested, the temperature spiked to 111 before dropping slightly. I don't want it to surpass 112, so it's time to turn off the heat and allow it to cool naturally. Once it's lukewarmish, transfer to sanitized jars. Clarified syrup is known for its light and transparent color. Why it's called clarified syrup is because unlike today, castor sugar used to contain impurities that easily led to crystallization. To combat this, egg whites were employed to clarify syrup, hence the name. This syrup has viscosity that can drip down like thread. It has a certain thickness but has no ribbon effect. Keep it airtight at room temperature for 1 to 2 years. Now let's make the golden syrup. It's a kind of invert syrup, but in mooncaking, it's just called invert syrup. Ingredients are simple. 500 grams of castor sugar, 200 ml filtered or bottled water, 0.5 grams of food-grade citric acid. I recommend using citric acid, but you can substitute it with 2 teaspoons of fresh lemon juice. Now here's a trick. Using a tablespoon to take 1, 2, 3, and 4 tablespoons out from castor sugar, as well as 1 tablespoon plus 1 teaspoon from the water. Regarding the citric acid, take about 1 tablespoon out of the water to dissolve it. For now, set aside these 3 guys and let's focus on these 2. A heads up here, you need to heat up this water before using it. Over the stove in a 6-inch clean pot, add sugar and water. Mix a little, then turn the heat on to low. Keep stirring non-stop to dissolve the sugar, but do it gently. With this little amount, the mixture may begin to boil before the sugar is entirely dissolved. But if it doesn't caramelize, it's fine as the risk of crystallization is low. Just stop stirring at this point. From now on, we're going to caramelize the sugar, but before that, make sure to simmer the mixture for at least 7 minutes because that will invert a reasonable amount of sugar. Once it starts to take on some color, watch the light hot. In about a minute, the color will darken in the center, and in a few seconds, the amber color is about to reach the sides of the pan. At this point, carefully swirl the pan, and in no time, the color will be evenly distributed, and the true color of the caramel will show through. Before it deepens too much, add remaining sugar. Also decisively and carefully add remaining water, which has just been boiled. When the water settles down a bit, add citric acid. There will be crystals formed in the mixture because of the temperature difference, but it's normal. Use a spatula to start stirring. Be extremely careful. First, you don't want to leave any sugar bits on the sides of the pan. Then you don't want the hot syrup to splatter and burn yourself. If the syrup starts to boil, just to turn the heat down and keep stirring. Once the crystals are dissolved, stop stirring. Brush the pan if any crystals clinging to the sides of it. So here, I wanted to test what temperature works for syrup. Many recipes suggest maintaining temperature between 112 to 114, known as the softball stage for sugar. Judging by the big bubbles, I think it's not ready, so I raised the temperature to 115. However, I noticed some tiny undissolved crystals in the syrup, so I turned off the heat and addressed the issue, which took me about 10 minutes. Afterward, I reintroduced the thermometer. Now take a look. This is 112 degrees. And this is 114, seemingly no difference. Then it jumped to 116 and stabilized there, so I increased the targeted temperature to 117. The thread also seems no big difference. I didn't fix the probe in the syrup, so the temperature may vary, so I decided to place the probe in the center of the pot. The temperature fluctuated between 116 to 117, so I turned the heat off, and the temperature immediately settled at 118. I consider 118 to be the upper limit for the syrup because it's a temperature right before the hardball stage. The whole process from adding citric acid took me about 25 minutes. Did you notice that I consistently agitated syrup, contrary to conventional norms? No worries, it's okay for this recipe. Currently, the consistency doesn't appear too thick, but on day 2, it shows a ribbon effect that it can stay for 3 seconds. Color-wise, this clarified syrup is slightly lighter than canola oil, and the golden invert syrup possesses a shade deeper than peanut oil. This is how they look after 1 week. The golden syrup should have been thickened, and when dropped from 1 meter high, it forms a consistent thread that can endure for nearly 50 seconds. Whereas the clarified syrup manages only 15 seconds. pH-wise, this golden syrup is 2.4 and this clarified syrup 2.3. To give an idea, this corn syrup is almost 2.7 and this honey is about 3.5. So to compare, I've made 2 batches of dough using the same Cantonese-style recipe, except for no baking soda for the upper row. The 2 doughs made with clarified syrup turned out noticeably softer, while the others feel quite similar by touch. The golden syrup dough with baking soda achieved the deepest yet modest color, a characteristic for Cantonese-style mooncakes. And the clarified syrup without baking soda is the palest, symbolizing the oldest northern Chinese-style mooncakes. After 1 day, the Cantonese-style dough is subjected to a process known as Hui You in Chinese, which translates to return of oil. This practice is an essential aspect of Cantonese-style mooncakes. In contrast, the traditional northern-style dough also undergoes some degree of oil returning, but is less prominent, which explains why the syrup is not suitable for Cantonese-style mooncakes. The honey dough yields a similar effect as this golden syrup, making it a substitute when golden syrup is unavailable. Right now, if I rank from crispiness to softness, the order is golden syrup, clarified syrup, then honey. In general, doughs made with baking soda are crispier than those without. Also, the clarified syrup dough without baking soda feels softest. Here's something interesting. After a week, the mouthfeel is reversed, from softness to crumbliness. The order is the golden syrup, honey, then clarified syrup. Overall, doughs made with baking soda taste softer than those without, meaning pH as well as the type of syrup affects the process of oil returning. Okay, that's it for today. See you next time.